A big hello to all the viewers. Welcome again to the DLife.in channel. I am Shashikant Iyengar, the host today. I am also DLife in Life member and a volunteer. And I thank DLife.in, especially Anup Singh, for letting me volunteer for this podcast. And for all those who are watching this program, this is not a nutritional advice or a medical advice. And we request you to please consult your doctor and a low carb nutritionist for any change. Also, there are no financials attached to the session. Everything is free of cost. So, what is DLife? DLife is a community platform for low carbers. It's a platform for those suffering from diabetes, obesity, PCOS, and other metabolic syndrome. DLife.in has over 250 success stories, and they also have more than 1,000 Indian low carb dishes. DLife was founded by Anup Singh, who is an engineer from IIT. Recently, Anup Singh and DLF has been recognized and awarded as Icons of India by Outlook magazine for pioneering low carb in India. And they also they have launched a diploma in low carb nutrition very recently. So viewers, today we have a very special guest from US. Is Dr. Angela Stanton. She's a PhD and she specializes in migraine headache. She herself was suffering migraine for so long, and finally one day she decided to do a lot of research and take health in her own hands. And she has also come out with a lot of books, and she has also developed a website as well as something called as the Stanton Protocol. So without wasting much time, I welcome Angela. Angela, welcome to India.
Thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to meeting everybody. My first time in India. What can I say?
Nice, Angela. So your topic is very interesting today, and migraine is something, something which people are suffering from years together, intractable migraine, and they are popping in a lot of pharmaceutical pills, and still people are suffering. They really don't know much about it. There are a lot of myths surrounding.
Oh, lost your sound.
See, you lost your sound.
Yeah. Oh, maybe now.
You can hear now.
Now, yes.
Now, okay.
Sorry. I think there is going to be some signal issue. So no issue. Okay, fine. Yeah. So we are glad to know that we are also happy to know that migraine can be a part of metabolic syndrome in the sense that it also depends upon the carb intake as well as electrolyte imbalance. So first of all, I welcome Angela again. Angela, welcome again.
Thank you.
So, Angela, I want you to introduce yourself. What is your background, from where you come, and all about your research? How you have entered into this migraine field.
Okay, sure. Well, I've been all my life, I've been a migrainer forever, but I didn't know that because when you're young, like in my teens, I didn't know that these are migraines. They were just coming with cyclical vomiting syndrome. And it's important that migraine may manifest in many ways, different from just pain. And so as a child, I didn't have pain, but I had a lot of vomiting and I had irritable bowel syndrome. And so this was always just chugged up, oh, you probably ate something. But as it turns out, it was just so regular that it couldn't have been the food. And then I didn't know I was a migrainer until after the birth of my second child. So I was 29. And then I forgot about it. I mean, I was a migrainer, but it wasn't something that I was working on. I had my life, the family, and I was in school and I was studying. And my doctorate is actually in economics with neuroscience. And so I was doing experiments and research, clinical trials with volunteers using hormones, neuropeptides like oxytocin and vasopressin, to see how those hormones change their decision making. So this is where my economics background is coming from. And I was teaching and researching and working, and I had migraines. And it got to the point that I was like between classes, I would lie down in my office at the university and I would try to get rid of my migraine. I would try to take my medications, and it just became unbearable. And so at that time, I quit everything and I decided to focus only on migraine. So this is how I got involved. And because I am a scientist, also I'm a professor and whatever, but in this case, the fact that I was a scientist came in really handy because I knew how to read the articles, understand them, and connect the dots better than others have.
I think, Angela, you've come a long way from a migraine sufferer who was not knowing what exactly migraine is. to getting a PhD, being highly qualified, someone who is, someone who is just associated with healthcare in some way. From there, you have actually what is called as maybe self-hacked or biohacked everything. You have learned. From there, you have cured yourself, I'll say, or rather controlled yourself very well. From there, you have written a lot of papers, lot of podcasts, and in fact now you have become a teacher also, of course. You do teach about migraine to a lot of
I do.
doctors, and even in some professional courses. And you have written a book and multiple books, of course, multiple research papers. So it's really excellent. And this is really something, I wish that in everyone in India who's suffering from migraine should actually read Angela's book. We'll come to that later. So I want to ask initially some very few basic questions. How do you really differentiate between migraine and a common headache? Now, I'm asking you this question because for a long time, even my mother was suffering from what is called as sinus. So she used to have sinus. She used to take that time, maybe analgin or other tablets. So later on, I also read about migraine. So how does migraine differ from these common headaches?
Okay, so very different, the two, because first of all, migraines don't need to come with a headache. So right away, we know that migraine isn't a headache. The migraine can come with a headache, but you can distinguish the headache of a migraine from a regular non-migraine headache. Because first of all, a non-migraine headache, if you take a medication, it's going to go away. But if you take a migraine headache medication, even with specific medications for migraine, they may not respond. And if you just take over-the-counter medicines, they will never respond. In addition, the headache of a migraine comes with what is called prodromes. So you will have some symptoms before the headache starts. And if you know how to catch that, then you recognize that, okay, I'm about to come down with a migraine, I can do something about it. And the problem is that most people don't catch this and they don't see it. In a regular headache, you don't have that. You just suddenly hit with a headache, you take some pills, it disappears. Now, the sinus headache is interesting because that has some similarities to migraine, and it's very difficult to to actually evaluate the two, because many migraineurs, including me for that matter, some of my migraine pains will start with a sinus drip and a pain in my sinus, except the difference will be that it's only on one side. So if somebody has a sinus infection, it's going to be on both sides. Plus, if they bend forward, like I have them put their head down as deep as they can, the pain is going to increase. But with migraine, it doesn't. So there are ways to distinguish the pains.
So how do we, in short layman's term, how do we really identify migraine in very short?
Oh,
Uh,
I'm sorry, you broke up.
how do we really identify that it's a migraine headache
Okay,
in very
so
short manner? Yeah.
given that we know that it comes with prodromes, if I know that it's a prodrome, then I know it's a migraine. And if it hurts on one side, that's a very important point. If it hurts, if it doesn't hurt, or whatever, but if it hurts, it can only hurt on one side at a time.
What exactly is this prodrome?
Prodrome is basically feeling that something is about to happen. It has a
Yep.
biological reason. But for example, a prodrome for most migraineurs will be that one of their eyes is going to become smaller. Like for me, my right eye is going to be visibly become smaller because the left side of my brain is running out of energy and it's not operating my right eye properly. So the droopiness and like the stroke-like symptoms. So that would be a prodrome, for example.
So this is going to be short-lived. You mean it is not going to be permanent? So once they are off this migraine episode, things will return to normal?
Well, not necessarily, because then you have a postdrome. So you have a
Hmm.
prodrome, you have the migraine, which can last for many days or even weeks. And then you have a postdrome, which is a period of recovery. And then you can start another one. So you may enter a cycle like I did when you end up with no days without the migraine.
Okay, okay. So Angela, is there any are there any triggers for migraine? I mean, what
So,
can trigger?
okay, so the things that actually trigger migraine in very short are the ones that take the person out of electrolyte balance. This is very difficult to define because many things can do that. So for example, a change in barometric pressure, for hormonal changes for women that modify the electrolytes in the body. Of course, carbohydrates modify the electrolytes because glucose removes water and salt from the cells. So basically anything that modifies electrolytes is going to be responsible to act as a trigger and trigger migraine. People say that, for example, chocolate triggers migraine. Chocolate doesn't trigger migraine. What triggers in chocolate is the too much potassium relative to sodium. So if migraineurs didn't have sugar in the chocolate and they just dipped the unsweetened chocolate into salt and ate it that way, they will not get a migraine.
Unimaginable. Dipping it in salt, yeah. But very, very interesting. Your concept, or the actual concept about salt is very, very interesting, and we'll come to it shortly. Now, what I wanted to know is, mm, does a person get multiple migraine attacks in a month, or is it once a month, or is it once in few times a year? How is it? Is it a regular
It-
feature?
It can be, if a person has only seldom migraines, it may increase to be regular once or twice a week. It can be every single day. It tends to increase over time because the brain is not able to compensate more and more and more. It's going to have a problem. But everybody starts at a slow start and then it increases. So it is quite possible to have only like once or twice a year and then move to every single day, but it may take many years, maybe decades.
So essentially, we can say that it's a lifelong condition.
It is it's a genetic condition. So people are
Okay,
born
so-
with it.
Yeah.
So it's a lifelong condition. It's a very difficult to explain the genetic part of it, but it's a channelopathy. So it is with us all the time. So once you're migraineur, it's going to be, unless the brain changes, such as getting old and there's brain degeneration and disconnection, trimming of the neurons, then it may stop, and that's not necessarily a good sign.
So essentially, this is a genetic condition. That means
Right.
if if the parents has it, then the possible that the offspring can
Well,
have
you
it.
know, it can even skip a generation. Like my parents didn't
Okay.
even have as much as a headache, but my grandparents did. And so it can skip a generation as well. The genes are there. And then the environmental factors, the epigenetics, is what's going to initiate it if it's going to happen that way.
That means we might have a susceptibility for that. And if our food intake everything is right, then okay, there is no issue. But then the moment we go wrong, and then something can happen. Okay.
Exactly. I was just saying the other day to an interviewer when I was interviewed by somebody else that if I lived on an uninhibited island where I had no stimulants such as light all day long, honking cars, lots of traffic, a lot of sugar and carbohydrates. If I didn't have all those things and I ate what would be considered ancestrally appropriate for humans, I probably wouldn't know I had migraine brain.
Now, two things: is migraine a race specific? Is it that certain race gets it more, and certain race gets it less? Is it something like that? Do you have any
You know,
information?
I don't think that is genetically speaking race different, but each group of the cultural population eats differently. And because it's nutritionally stimulated and triggered, so if you are a different culture, I would rather say that than race, culturally specific. So in a culture where they don't eat so much carbohydrates and they don't eat many things that we're going to talk about, then it doesn't matter that you have migraine brain because you won't know.
So in your research, have you ever come across certain cultures where the incidents are less, or is it high in some? Have you ever? Uh, uh,
Right.
you
So
have?
there are
Yeah.
cultures, most of those cultures that are meat eating cultures, where if you look at ancestral tribes, for example, you won't find a migrant in an ancestral
Okay.
tribe that doesn't eat any carbohydrates. And also because they live in the savannah, they live isolated, they have no electricity, no TV, nothing of a nature. So if I go back to those tribes, they will be migrant free. Also, some countries, for example, Uruguay is a very heavily meat-based country, and some other ones in South America. And so and unfortunately, it has to be meat-based rather than plant-based because plants are carbs. And so if you're talking about a nation in general that would not experience migraine, even though they may be genetically predisposed, that would be a nation that doesn't eat carbohydrates or is completely removed from the business of modern life.
Now, very important question: is it that females tends to have a bit more of migraine than male? How is it? Because
Right, they do.
yeah, because even in
Yeah,
my experience, whenever I hear migraine, we generally hear it from females than male. It is very rare. I really don't recall any male telling in the last 50 years of my life, but yeah, females, yes. So how is it?
Okay, so first of all, it's interesting because, as you know, I have the Facebook migraine group, and I actually have several males from India, and I don't have a
Okay.
single female. So it's interesting that we have different experience, but indeed it is more prominent in females because of the hormonal variations which modulate and change the electrolytes. And also, women tend to eat differently from men. They tend to eat more for beauty than for health or for strength, and I think that those are factors that greatly affect how a person is going to respond to life around them. So women tend to be more sensitized.
So we had just addressed this before. I'd just like to again, specify this. What could be the some of the common triggers of migraine? So if you can tell some 4, 5, 6 triggers which would be there usually.
Okay, so first of all, not enough salt, not enough water, too much carbohydrates. These are the three biggest triggers. If you avoid these three, I would just say just these three, you may not have a migraine.
Fine. Now, when I ask trigger, it also means that many people have, like someone has put a question over here also, that lights, bright light can trigger. So what are those
Okay,
external
so
factors?
excellent question. So that actually goes into the brain, the biology, in that for migraine brain, the genetically different brain, in that the sensory neurons have more connections among each other. And so when I'm looking at the same light as somebody who's not a migrainer, it will appear much brighter for me because my brain is communicating that light through more neuron communications. So it's going to come through as an amplified message. And so it's not going to be brighter, but I will perceive it as brighter. And the same with sound, the same with odors. Some of us also taste and touch.
Fine. Thanks. And what I meant to ask is again, what are the current paradigms? I mean, uh, we are going to just want to touch again. What is the way we think it is, which may not be right?
Okay, so medically speaking, the paradigm is all over the place. It could be a vascular disease, or it could be a neurological disease. It could be psychological, or just brain cuckoo. There are a lot of hypotheses out there. And of course, not one of them is really true. The genetic hypothesis, which is, of course, it's not a hypothesis because you can see it, that's the only paradigm that I personally accept. But there are many paradigms out there, and therefore many different treatments as a result of the different paradigms.
And so, which are the commonly used pharmaceutical drugs for this? Is it pain reliever, or is it any other drug, like, let us say, I suspect even beta blockers could be used. So I really don't know. I'll let us know from you what could be,
Okay, I have a
those
list
few
about
drugs.
that big. So let me just give you the tough ones that I see. And let me give you them in classes. So the first class of drugs that are now released and being used are the CGRP inhibitors, which are going after the certain receptors in the brain or outside of the brain that sense pain. So they don't prevent migraine, they try to prevent the pain, but they have a lot of side effects because they have CGRP receptors all over the body, including the heart and the kidneys and everywhere else. And so when they're inhibited, it causes major trouble. The older medications that everybody, of course, gets are the triptans. The triptans can be injected or pill or a nasal spray. And their mode of work is delivering a very strong vasoconstriction. So it's equivalent to a couple of cups of coffee, and lasts longer. And the reason why they sometimes work is because sometimes, in fact, the vasoconstriction is what the migraine needs as a result of dehydration. So constricting the blood vessels will make it appear like she's more hydrated. But if, for example, the pressure is increasing, and taking triptan at the same time, it's exactly the wrong thing, because at that time vasodilation would be helpful. And then there are a lot of medications like Topamax, for example, which would be a medication given for people with seizures. And so it literally stops the brain, the calcium and the sodium voltage gated channels. So basically the brain stops working. So many of the migraineurs call that to be dopamix, because they're become sort of kind of doped. And then, of course, serotonin medications and all kinds of analgesics and even narcotics. We're talking about a lot of different kind of medications, and not one of them really ever works.
Fine. So what about the relief which this drug provides? Do they really provide relief, or is it?
There really isn't any relief. And also, and I forgot to add, large class of drugs that they're getting are for blood pressure reduction, which is ironic because migraineurs typically have low blood pressure. So giving a medication to reduce blood pressure further is not only not helping, but it's actually becomes harmful. And so these medications may temporarily work. And like I said, triptans, if given at the right time, when the constriction of the blood vessels is benefit, it will work, but it will only work for a very short time. And then you will have to repeat because there's no change made to the person. So there's no repair.
Fine. So now, Angela, now we have come across, we have gone across all these very common questions, and some more will come later on when we open for the question and answer session later on. Now let us come to your research. We'll come to low carb later. What is interesting is this electrolyte concept, the potassium and sodium. So can you a little bit elaborate on this concept?
Sure. And again, this is a complicated subject. So if you're looking at the channels I mentioned earlier, channelopathy, these are the channels that work with creating electricity in the brain. So the action potential and the resting potential. And in order for the action potential to start, which is the electricity, the communication between cells to start, the cell needs salt. And the salt, or sodium, I should say, and the sodium sort of kind of has to enter in millions of little places across the neuron, which is a very long axon. And if in one place there is no sodium, then what's going to happen? Basically, the electricity stops right there because sodium is responsible for running into the cells at that location. And if there's no sodium there, then it can't. And so the problem with the sodium potassium is that they trade places. So the sodium runs into the cell to start the electricity and the potassium runs out. And then when it reverses to the resting potential, then the potassium goes back into the cells and the sodium comes out. So there has to be a constant flow of sodium potassium in the right amount to initiate an action potential. And so migraine is actually when this action potential does not initiate.
So very interesting. That means we need to ensure adequate salt in our diet. And if someone is advised a low salt diet, a migraine, then it's going to be a disaster. And
It is. Yeah.
And I think recently I just read your post on Quora that someone, if they take what is called as a green smoothie with fruits. So can you just explain? It's very, very interesting because many of the people, they do take such smoothies. So can you just, for the benefit of viewers who would see this recording later on, so can you just please highlight on that few points?
Right. So if you're eating any plants, we better be eating it with fiber intact and fresh. So when we're talking about a smoothie, we destroy all the fiber. And so basically it's just going to become sugar and it's going to hit us like as if we ate. And also don't forget that if we eat an apple, for example, I can eat one apple and then I'm full. But if I have an apple smoothie, I may have 4 or 5 apples in it. And I will still drink it because I will like it. It's good tasting, but it's a lot more sugar than that one apple would have been. And because the fiber is destroyed, it's just really absorbs very quickly. And the problem is the sugar, glucose entering the cells. And this is important. Glucose entering the cells, it physically removes water and therefore sodium from the cells. So when we have something like a smoothie or any strong carbohydrate that is full of sugar, we're literally robbing the brain from the very thing that we need, which would be salt, sodium. And we may add all of the potassium, but potassium can't do anything without the sodium initiating the process.
So this is a very interesting one, which I just read, a green smoothie with fruits full of potassium and no salt. And it's really going to hit hard.
Okay, so we have a problem right there because not just the carb, but also if you mix sodium with carbs, because the carbs, when the glucose enters the cells, and it removes water and sodium. So whatever sodium you actually eat with the smoothie will also be removed.
Very interesting. I'll just come to this concept again when we come to this low carb thing. In World Nutrition Summit, I heard you telling that magnesium should not be taken at night. Am I correct? Did you mention that, or was it someone I don't recall?
What was that? I didn't understand that one word.
Don't take magnesium supplement at night.
Oh, yes, that's right. Magnesium. Yeah. Magnesium is an excitatory mineral. And what it actually does, when the sodium comes into the cell and the potassium leaves, it operates a little gate. It sort of kind of opens the door for the sodium to come in and the potassium to go out. And so because of this mechanistic action of it, it is part of the excitatory process. And also it has a connection with GABA and other neurotransmitters. And so we recommend to not take magnesium at night for this reason, because then the person is going to be up and hyper and ready to go. However, in the morning, when you want to be up and ready to go, we recommend all migraineurs to take a full dose or the recommended magnesium.
That means, Angela, you recommend that if migraineurs have to take magnesium, then it better be morning and not night.
Yeah, I recommend magnesium, and I also recommend other supplements as well. So that's not the only one, but magnesium is a very important one. So anybody coming in, I usually have my migraineurs test their blood for mineral needs, so I can see what they need. We don't supplement unless the need is shown, but magnesium and some other ones like B2, for example, riboflavin, is something that we automatically support because of the migraine brain.
Fine, fine. I was very specific with this question because as a low carb community, magnesium is one supplement we very strongly recommend to all, and all of us take magnesium. In fact, we used to say that magnesium relaxes everyone, so that we take it at night. But then I think for migraineurs, it's a no. So they better shift
It's a
to
no-go,
the
right? It works as a real extent for other people because they don't have a hypersensitive brain, and they don't. We might gonna sleep like cats, so they're kind of half sleep. You're not really in deep sleep, and so we wake up very easily.
Fine. So now the very interesting, a bit more explanation on this low carb concept. How higher sugar levels or how high carbohydrate food can really hit a migraine rather.
It did, and I looked up a lot of records on this just recently, and unfortunately, this is a trend. And I am beginning to see a lot of countries, people who switch because the country enforces a more carbohydrates-based diet. And the number of migraineurs just keeps on increasing and increasing and increasing. So I am flooded with migraineurs coming in from countries where you wouldn't expect migraineurs to even exist. And so India is a special case because India has a very large vegetarian population. But being a vegetarian doesn't mean you're eating a high carbohydrate diet. It doesn't need to mean that. And so I think everything has been taken out of context with eating the wrong kind of grains, processed foods, processed oils, and sugar in everything. And so those are the problem areas.
Fine. Now, what about this various level of carbohydrate restriction? Whether it is, let us say, we categorize LCHF as something with 100 grams carbohydrate, ketogenic, maybe anywhere ranging from very strict 20 to 50, and then carnivore diet. So, what is your view about all these various carb restricted diet in connection with migraine? So, what is your experience?
But my experience is that they're all fantastic, but for different times and phases of the migraine from healing from metabolic disease, because migraineurs tend to have such huge carbohydrate intolerances that oftentimes switching to a ketogenic right away is going to cause a lot of sugar crashes. So it's not to the benefit of the migraineur to make sudden changes. And so my protocol is a low carb high fat. And then we run a test, which is a 5-hour blood glucose. It's like an oral glucose tolerance test, except nobody's eating the glucose. So you just eat a low carb diet. And I checked a 5-hour postprandial blood test every half an hour, taking a look. And if they have crash, even on that diet, then they are put on the carnivore diet. And the carnivore diet is all meat. And it allows the glucose to be generated by the liver via gluconeogenesis, but they're not eating glucose. And so they don't have a way to crash. There's no sugar crash on the carnivore diet. So I support all of them for different reasons. And of course, I have a group as well for just ketogenic diet where we practice and a whole lot of variations like hypercarnivore, which would be carnivore with a little bit of carbohydrates. And that would be like an interim step. And then there's the carnivore diet with dairy or without dairy. So there are variations, but I support all of them. And my low carb high fat diet is not 100 gram carbohydrates. It is less than 70. It's between 50 and 70 for women and 65 to 85 for men.
Fine. So these are the variations I think you come across after a lot of research.
Right.
How is the association of hyperinsulinemia with migraine? Does it have any connection, or is it only blood sugar?
Okay, so there's a very interesting question here because everybody thinks of hyperinsulinemia as having high fasting insulin. And I find that 90% of my migraineurs don't have high fasting insulin. In fact, some of them have very low. But what I find is that if I send them to a real official oral glucose tolerance test where they're actually taking glucose, they have a huge insulin reactions. It's almost like a hyper reaction to insulin. So it can go from nearly zero. Some of them can be, I'm sending them because I'm thinking they have type 1 diabetes and they're running out of insulin. It's so low. And then they come back with a test where they actually went above in insulin to where they should have been. So it's more like a hyper insulin reaction than having a high insulin all the time.
That's very interesting. So that means this insulin secretion post OGTT 75 grams glucose does spike, and they have a strong correlation with migraines. That's
They
what you
do
mean.
because, right, they do. And they cause very strong sugar crashes. It's a very different group of people who have migraines.
That's very interesting. In fact, many a times, even in our group, while fasting insulin is usually measured, but many a times I think we should also focus on what is called as the post OGTT insulin measurement also becomes quite important, and that's what we have seen as far as in diabetes is concerned. The Kraft pattern is something
Right.
which we
That's
have.
what I use. I use a Kraft test, but modified. And instead of checking insulin, I'm checking ketones because ketones
Okay.
are proxy for insulin. So you can actually use, so I'm looking at blood glucose and blood ketones for 5 hours, every half an hour. So it's exactly the Kraft test, but instead of insulin, I'm measuring ketones.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So, can you give the viewers a short glimpse of what could be the Stanton protocol? What exactly it is?
Okay, so the standard protocol has what I call a baseline. So the baseline is where we should start, and which means that everybody has to calculate how much water they need to drink and drink the minimum amount of water and never exceed to the maximum. They have to start taking salt regularly with every second cup of water, which is very important, and also morning and at night. These are our preventives because we need the extra salt. They all have to take the magnesium. They have to quit. In the United States, it's easier than in India, but all grains have to go. Everybody eats just processed foods. So all processed foods have to go. All sweeteners have to go, including the naturals or the 0-calorie sweeteners. All of them have to go. Honey too, everything has to go. I also don't allow smoothies, shakes, and these kind of things, or substitutes like meat substitute or like milk substitutes like almond milk or soy milk. I don't support those. So the baseline is basically to get rid of all the bad food, including seed and vegetable oils, get rid of tea. I don't allow tea because it's a diuretic and there are so many problems with the imbalance of the electrolyte. So, and also limit the amount of coffee they can have to only 1 cup a day. And they can have 2 cups of decaf if they wish. So there are a lot of steps to reach the protocol. And the highlight is really the sodium potassium balance. So everybody's supposed to eat a very high potassium diet and then salt accordingly. And the carbohydrates is set, and also the type of carbohydrates. So they can't have, for example, potatoes or corn or any grain, but also any starches, any beans. We don't eat legumes. So unfortunately, many of the vegetarian population, and I work with a lot of vegetarians, and they have to eat those foods. And it's very difficult to figure out how to actually make it work. But basically the protocol itself is an extremely low carbohydrate and very high salt and high fat diet. And we eat a lot of dairy. I found that nearly all migraineurs are good with dairy. We don't have lactose intolerance issues at all. And we eat a lot of eggs and we eat a lot of seafood and fish.
Thanks. Thank you. And yeah, see, Indian vegetarians typically have dairy. So, that is something which
Right. And
which
eggs.
can
I think you
eggs.
also eat eggs.
Yeah, let me explain the concept in India. In India, vegetarian means those who take dairy. That's all. Period. And then, yeah, there are few vegetarians who do take eggs. While it is not there, see, India is more religious. It is based on religion. So one is vegetarian, one is, we call them non-vegetarian. That's all. So we don't have anything in between. But then people do take eggs. Yeah. So that makes it very easy for a lot of us to
And
actually.
dairy is very good. It's rich in the
Yeah.
fantastic short chain fatty acids, and it has a lot of great protein. So dairy is excellent. I mean, our children are suckling milk, right? I mean, that's obviously the best food.
And I think among the dairy, the India's contribution to the world is ghee. So the origin is ghee of
There you go.
ghee is in from India. So
Ghee,
that's how it
butter,
is.
butter for me, but ghee for you.
So how please let the viewers how you can support migraineurs. What are the different services you offer? You have a website and you have a Facebook group. How is it? Can you just tell us?
Okay, so the Facebook group, I have two Facebook groups for migraineurs, and one of them has almost 9,000 members now, and the other one is about 1,600, and it's both of them are about 7 years old. So they can just find me under Migraine Sufferers, which is the protocol group, and I start everybody in the protocol group. They can't start with the keto. And did you ask me about supplements? Or what was the first part of the question?
No, about a website. Do you have
Oh, the website.
your
Oh,
own
okay.
website?
Website.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, there's a little bit delayed here. So I have several websites. I have one that is the StantonMigraineProtocol.com. So that's Stanton, my name, migraine protocol, one word.com. That's my main website. And I also have one that's migraine-book.com. These are the two that I primarily use. And of course, I have a nonprofit foundation, actually, which is StantonMigraineProtocol.org, which collects funds, which then I can use to support migraineurs. Like if somebody's coming in and can't afford to buy the book, we are known to send a book to them, or can't afford to buy a meter, we're known to send a meter to them for blood glucose and blood ketones. So these are my websites. And then on Twitter, I'm also prominent with @migrainebook.
So please tell us about the book which you have written.
Okay,
Very,
so
very
this is the
interesting.
second edition. This is a very big book. It's almost 700 pages, and it's the second edition of my original book, which was about me. This book, it still has the about me section, but then it explains migraine, the actual anatomy and the physiology. It's quite difficult for many people. And then it has a section which I call the drugs of shame, which lists the most common drugs that migraineurs are prescribed. And I'm listing why they are dangerous for migraineurs and what problems I see with them. And then the last section is for scientists and doctors, which explains migraine in a more scientific tone, the genetics, and also comorbidities. There are a lot of comorbidities with migraine that I find in the group. And so the book explains all these. And I'm now working on the third edition, which I'm hoping is going to be a little bit smaller, but it's going to contain more information.
Nice to hear. So Angela, thanks. So basically, I think what we learn here from you is a low carb diet works very well, keeping the carbohydrate low. Basically, it's carbohydrate or sugar or glucose, low glucose diet, and then with adequate salt. Now, one question here is there any specific salt recommendation? I mean, is it they have to take certain grams? Anything you have in
Right.
mind, or is it individualized?
Okay, so no, I have a very specific salt amount because I want to make sure that we don't exceed what would become unhealthy. So I'm taking less than what, if you go to a hospital and you get an IV with saline IV, I'm taking less than that per cup. So that in that case, it's 1/8 of a teaspoon, which comes to 300 milligrams sodium. That's about 750 milligrams salt. So if you're measuring it by scale, or by teaspoon, it's 1/8 of a teaspoon salt per 1 cup, which is 8 ounces. I think it's 240 milliliter water. In terms of what kind of salt, this is very, very critical because a lot of people like the very fancy salts like Himalayan and other salts, but these salts have a lot of trace minerals that are unhealthy, like lead, mercury. There's nothing wrong with eating them time to time, but given how much salt we eat, like I will eat about 6-7 grams sodium, 6-7 grams sodium. So we're talking about 14-15 grams salt a day. And so when I eat that much, I don't want to eat a lot of lead, and that way I will be. So I just simply go for the cheapest purified salt. And I recommend iodized salt for those who don't have Hashimoto's, because iodine is really lacking in our food today. And particularly those who eat a lot of plants that damage the thyroid, iodine can sort of kind of counter that.
That's very interesting. Good that I remember to ask you because a lot of us here are not clear. And in fact, let me tell you, Angela, last many months, even I've been thinking, no point in using all this fancy salt. A plain iodized salt is good because primarily this being a vegetarian country, the lack of iodine can have its own issues. So
Right.
net to translate, Angela, you mean to say around 40 to 50 gram salt, iodized salt in a day? That's what you mean?
Right. I'm
Right.
taking a lot of salt because I'm taking a salt, this 1/8 teaspoon of salt. I'm actually taking it in a capsule form
Fine.
because I don't like the taste of salt. And
Yeah.
I'm taking it in every single cup of water that I drink. And I drink a little bit more than my minimum because I am active physically. So I drink about 12, 13 cups of water, and each will have a salt pill in it.
Yeah.
Plus, I also salt my food. So it's a lot of salt.
So that salt capsule you're taking, does it cause any bowel intolerance?
No, it's this is actually salt capsule that I designed.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
I don't know if you can do
Uh-huh.
that. It's not sold in India, and this is just it's 360 milligrams sodium, and it has iodine in it, and it's in a veggie cap, so vegetarians and vegans can also use it. And I've been taking this now for about 5 years. I think I don't sell it. It's created by my son, and so they created a company for me actually, so that I can have the salt pill, and then it became a business. And I also design my magnesium. But so this is what I take, and I take a lot of it. And I have to say this one, just have to add to that. I've been sick for the past week. It's probably some bug and a lot of stomach issues. And I haven't been able to eat for nearly 6 days. And I've been hydrating with salt and water, taking my magnesium and taking my supplements. And I went to the hospital to see if I was okay or if I was dehydrated. And the doctor looked at me and said, "You haven't been eating for like these many days, and your blood test tells me you're absolutely hydrated and perfect." So this is very important that people do to put salt into the water, because then if you don't, you dilute your electrolyte, and you continue with your supplements. Even if you're sick, just keep on taking it, and whatever stays will stay, and whatever doesn't stay, that's another problem.
Thanks, Angela. And for viewers, those please pass on the message. Those who are suffering from migraine, please get in touch with Angela Stanton, so that those who are willing to reduce their carbohydrate level and those who want to relieve themselves from their lifelong suffering, those who want to have remission of migraine, and they can just go ahead and contact Angela Stanton in Facebook group, or just very simple thing is just Google Angela Stanton migraine, and you will come across a host of information about her. So thank you, Angela. So what I'll
Thank
do
you.
is I'll just open up everyone for a question and answer session. So this is going to be very brief, and depends upon the timing you have. So I encourage, I've unmuted everyone, and they can go ahead and ask any question they want. So we have Sneha Gupta, who is also a migraine viewer. So she might want to share something very eagerly. In fact, when we informed, she was very eager to interact with you. Yes, Sneha.
Hi, good morning, Angela, or good
Good
evening.
morning. I just saw you join my migraine group, so nice meeting you.
Yes, no. It's been wonderful to get introduced to you. I have a number of questions. So Shashi, if other people have questions, please just wave and I'll stop. I don't want to hog the session.
Make it very. My request is make it very brief and razor sharp, if you don't mind.
Yes, absolutely. So Angela, one of the things, because I've never had an answer to this, if a migraine is about to start, and that happens with the auras and the blurring and all of that, is there anything I can do which is non-medical intervention to stop it in its tracks?
Absolutely. You have in the group, you're going to learn about what's called a salt test, in which you take a little bit of salt and you put it under your tongue and you just let it dissolve and absorb. And if the salt helps, then that means you need to take more salt. And if it doesn't help, that means that you need a little bit more potassium, but we don't supplement potassium. So then you need to eat more potassium food.
Okay. Can you also tell me why do we get these blurry lights and psychedelic patterns and vision going from one particular side and then slowly spreading, and why does this happen?
Okay, so it's called the cortical spreading depression. And because you are an aura migrainer, you literally visualize how the electrical wave is going through your brain. So cortical spreading depression is the one part of your brain sends out an electrical signal all the way through the brain. Basically, it's depolarization. It's just passing sodium across the brain. And you see every single neuron that is being touched by this electricity comes online saying, yes, I'm here. And so this pattern is the lines and the dots and the shapes and whatever else you see that are part of aura. That's called a cortical splitting depression.
Wow. Oh my gosh, it's so good to have an explanation about this. And the other thing that I've always wondered, because sometimes these headaches, I don't like to take anything for them. And these headaches can be really splitting. And like you said, they can last for a number of days. What is it? Is it doing any long-term damage to your brain when all this is going on?
Very good questions, one after the other here. Yes, it does do damage because basically it's not the pain itself that is causing the damage, but the fact of why you have the pain, meaning you don't have sodium in that particular spot, so you can't start electricity. And we know that brain cells survive only if they can communicate to other nerve cells. And so if a neuron is unable to communicate because it doesn't have a chance to create the communication of electricity, then it's going to actually, the draw is going to die off. So the brain is going to get damaged from the lack of electricity, not from the pain.
And how does this damage kind of show itself? How does it illustrate itself?
Okay, so there are a lot of people start losing their memory. They will have some problems at times when they have no migraine. So you will see that because it's basically the disconnection of the neurons. And so when the neurons are connected and they're talking, it helps you to recall memory. It helps you to talk. It helps you to think, helps you to focus. If they disconnect, depending upon where they disconnect, you may have some permanent damage in an area that is associated with thinking. It may be associated with sight. So some of the migraineurs may see a permanent blind spot in their eyes because that part of the brain, that neuron, is not functioning anymore. And so there are some visible signs for you visible. And of course, if they put you into the proper scanner, then it can also be seen that there is a region that is not functional.
Wow. Wow. Very interesting. Anybody else want to ask?
Yeah, there's a couple of questions here. One, let me preempt Kamlesh, sensitive to light and sound. Yeah, that's already addressed. There's one more question from Kamlesh. Is there any laboratory test to confirm migraine?
No, there isn't. And there should be, because genetically speaking is the only way at this point that it can tell you that you may have migraine. Of course, genetics is not a guarantee, it's a potential. But if you have a brain that is set up as a migraine brain, then unless you're really careful, you will in fact come down with a migraine. This is about the only way to prove that you have migraine in terms of a medical test. They can do, in terms of research, we can examine migraineurs and we can distinguish migraineurs, like for example, EEG, which is looking at the brain activity waves. And we know that the migraineurs have completely different size electrical impulses than non-migraineurs, more frequency, of course, and there's less difference between the action and the resting potential in terms of magnitude. So we know that it's a different brain. It can be tested, but these are not available for regular doctor offices. So you'd have to go into a research center to do it.
Thanks, Angela. So I hope that answers your question, Kamlesh. Dr. Tanmoy Das says here, there's a misconception that salt causes and increases blood pressure. Can you clarify on that?
Right. So salt doesn't increase blood pressure, it increases blood volume. And there's a huge difference. So as a doctor, you are familiar with cardiovascular disease. So cardiovascular disease is a condition where the vascular system is inflamed. And so it's not able to move when the volume of the blood increases. And so at that time, the blood pressure will increase, of course. It will also increase when the blood volume goes down, because then it takes more pressure and more energy to push the blood through, or the heart rate may go up for those who have inflexible vascular system. But for a healthy individual, this is not applicable. So those who eat low carb, high fat of any kind will not have cardiovascular disease. And if they did, there's a good chance of remission. We have seen examples for it. And in this case, the salt, if I take a person and dissolve every part of that person, and I look at only the minerals in it. An average person has up to 1.5 pounds of salt. So if we have salt, and we have salt in every single cells, we are basically seawater creatures, then salt is part of us. It's required for the heart to work, for the liver to work, for the kidneys to work, for everything to work. So how can it possibly be bad? So it's not the salt, it's the application of salt when in context of the foods that we're eating.
Thank you. Thank you.
Uh,
There is, Dr.
Yeah.
Tanmay, you want to say something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great answer. I think I that is what most people would ask me if I tell them, go off, take salts for your health or for your migraine. And the first thing they come up with that is salt for bad for my blood pressure, and my increased blood pressure will give me more headache. So that is what I try to convince them with the reasons. And I think, Angela, this is fantastic. I will now tell them what you told me.
Very good. Thank you.
So there's a comment here from Mr. Bhaskar. Fantastic information. I'm not a migraine viewer. I wanted to skip this podcast, but I'm glad I attended. Bhaskar sir, yes, you can
Fantastic.
actually help someone who's suffering from migraine. This is the basic idea. You can
Yes.
direct those people to Angela Stanton's website or Facebook group, and you can help, because if we have knowledge, then we can help 10 other people. Please remember that.
Yes,
Right.
so true that is, Shashi. So true.
Yeah. So
And I just
Thank
want
by
to
the
add
way,
one more,
yeah,
one more
yeah.
thing, if I may, is that my help on Facebook is completely free. So anybody can join and everything is free. It's a free service. It's just to help.
Yeah.
Where the book is available, Dr. Tanmoy, I think it's available in Amazon. Yeah, Angela?
Right.
Book
It's,
is
it's on
available, yeah.
Amazon. I published it on Amazon for the fastest access. So you have to get
So
it on
so
Amazon.
it's available. So thank you. And now, Sneha, the floor is open to you.
Thank
I
you.
will only restrict you as much as the time which Angela can spare.
Yeah. I just have a couple more questions. Angela, I've been having migraines ever since I was a child, and one of the things was the auras, but then it was the nausea and the vomiting. Now, why the vomiting? What's the vomiting got to do with the head, which is the headache, and the migraine,
Okay.
where all this goes on?
Okay, so I actually describe this in the book real well. And it has something to do with what is called the fight or flight syndrome. So the fight or flight is when you're in danger and you either have to fight for your life or you have to run away. And this is part of migraine. It's our hyperexcited nervous system that is running out of energy, and it initiates a fight or flight because it wants to have more energy. And in the fight or flight, your body releases sugar. The brain doesn't know it's not sugar that it needs, and it's not that kind of energy, but it's salt, but it's going to initiate a fight or flight. And so when a fight or flight is initiated in you, the first thing that an animal will do under threat is to empty whatever is undigested in the stomach, and also empty whatever is that partially digested, because this is a mechanism that can save your life. If you look at the life of a sea cucumber, what it does when it's in danger, it's going to dump its entire stomach and intestines, and it's just going to rebuild it later, but it's going to dump it so that the predator that is chasing it is going to be busy eating that, and it can escape at the same time. So it's, in evolutionary terms, it's a benefit to us to have that. We don't like it, but it serves a function. And this is a prodrome. So when you have this, then that that you started already, and you will end up having a migraine very soon if you don't control for the sodium and the potassium and water.
Right. Wow, I've always wondered about this. I mean, my parents wouldn't believe that I was going to be having a splitting headache when the vomiting started. They thought I was making it all up, but so good to have an actual explanation on it. I also want to know, why is it that some people's brains, like mine and yours, are a migraine brain and others aren't? What is the difference between the two brains? Why
Okay,
does this happen?
Okay, so this is a genetic part of it. So we are born with a different brain, because when we're talking about hundreds of thousands of years ago, when we didn't have civilization and we had to survive out in the fields, and we had to listen to the wild animals or where they were because we were prey. to a predator, then the enhanced sensory organs were to our benefit. So smelling a lion 2 miles away from you is much more beneficial to you than smelling the lion when it's already jumping at you. So we have enhanced sensory organs to be able to detect our environmental better. And I think that all humans were probably like this. Either we just simply adapted because of all the overflow of information and noise and smell, and some people were able to adapt, or maybe we are just simply different. And in terms of evolutionary paths, maybe we were special people that the group could use. Like maybe we were the ones up all night long protecting those who were sleeping because they were more likely predatorial activity, or like full moon. We tend to be very active, and it bothers us because that too provides a better opportunity for a predator to attack a human. And so we just simply have a stronger sensory organ system, which then requires more minerals. If we were told that we could eat as much salt as we wanted, we may not have the problem because we just simply run out of salt. That's basically the problem.
Okay. And just one final question, two actually. One small one. Whenever I've had flaxseed, I find that invariably it triggers the auras and I have a headache. Why something like flaxseed doesn't happen with sunflower seed or with the other seeds, chia seed? Why is there anything linked to flaxseed?
Right, flaxseed is a grain, and it's the same as eating a wheat bread or anything else. It has a lot more anti-nutrients, and some of these anti-nutrients interrupt the process of protein building, electrolyte management. It will interrupt a lot of things. This is one reason why we cut grains out for microneurs, is because they all contain so much anti-nutrients that we don't have the ability to handle, not just carbs, but anti-nutrients. And so flaxseed, I only ate flaxseed once. I was in Norway for a presentation. I was on a conference, and that was the last time I was going to have it because I was so sick from it that I just couldn't believe it. And also flaxseed has certain oils, the ALA oil that people eat it for to get the omega-3 fatty acids. But that ALA is not really absorbable or convertible by humans. And so you're eating a particular product that isn't really appropriate for humans to work with. We don't have the capacity to do that. And so it becomes very complicated for us to do it, and it uses a lot more energy. And so it changes how our body responds to some of the foods that we eat.
Okay, very interesting. I've never known flaxseed being described as a grain before.
It is a grain, right? It is a grain.
That's a new learning for us.
That's, and Shashi, as a keto or low carb, you use so much flaxseed. You find it in all the flour mixtures. The keto flours or the low carb flours, they have flaxseed. Flaxseed is used a hell of a lot. Wow, that's
now that you're in our group, you're going to learn that we don't support any flours, not even flaxseed or almond flour. None of that. Those are dirty keto. We don't support those.
Right. Okay.
Okay, those are all ground and they're all broken down and they become sugar. Even though flax has very little sugar, it's going to stuff you up. It's going to create a blockage basically in your colon, and it's going to soak up all the water, may even constipate you tremendously. It will cause a lot of digestive distress, but it really isn't. And because it's ground up, it really isn't the same as if you grab the flaxseed and you ate it. So we don't support, like you can have almonds, fine, but you can't have almond flour because you destroyed the whole thing and made it into a processed food. Wow,
interesting. I'm not sure I like my sensitive brain. I'd much prefer, a more adapted brain, I think.
I think if I may add here, because it's very important for migraineurs among us, to know that to be a migraineur has tremendous positives. For example, I saved an entire neighborhood when we had an earthquake in 1994, and the gas leak in one of my neighbors, I could hear, nobody could hear, and I could hear this, and it was over a half a mile away. And my husband, it took him over an hour to find where it was. He went from house to house to find where the cap flew off from the earthquake. And he was able to cap it and save the entire neighborhood. Other neighborhoods were not so lucky and they blew up. I was watching them blowing up one after the other. So migraineurs have a lot of advantages. I like my migraine brain. I don't like the pain. You can prevent the pain.
Yes.
You have to modify your lifestyle, but it is very good to be a migraineur. I can smell fires from very far.
Yes.
I hear things other people don't hear. And I can really, I feel the weather change a day before it changes. I mean, it just comes with a lot of benefits that you can't even pay enough to get elsewhere.
Yes, certainly smell and taste. I've always, I can hear things which other people can't. I can smell, particularly the smell. People can come into a room and they can't smell it, and I'm sitting there and smelling it all the time. So that's amazing. Okay, the last question. I used to have a lot of migraines before I got on the keto diet. Then they disappeared, but now they've come back again. Not as frequently as before, but they have come back again. What is the reason?
Okay, so probably it's because it's a dirty keto. So it helped you at the beginning because the change was so large that your body sort of kind of compensated and said, let's see what's happening here. And as you're changing your diet, your body still remains the same. It takes several months, maybe even years for your body to change. Just to adapt to keto. It can take up to 6 months for some people. And so when you start keto, it doesn't mean you're in ketosis. But your migraine may disappear because you remove some of those food items that cause the biggest of problems. But then as you stay on the ketogenic diet and you reintroduce some things, such as, for example, flaxseed or almond flour or similar things, then you're going to end up getting the same problem that you had before, maybe in a smaller scale. So maybe you're going to have fewer migraines or maybe less severe migraines, but there's still going to be migraines because you haven't addressed the underlying issue completely, just partially.
Right. Just amazing session. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for all those insights.
You're welcome.
Unbelievable. And I'm going to be learning a lot more with you. I've got your book already. So
Good.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for this.
Thanks.
Thank
Yeah.
you for this great service that you provide. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Sneha is one person. Sneha and Anjali, they have a lot of questions and they have a lot of thirst for knowledge. So if you give them 8-hour session, also they have a lot of questions in their bag to come out. But we appreciate because the more question people ask, the more learning we get. Because the questions have thrown up certain thing which was not there in the discussion. So it's a great learning for all who are going to see this. So once again, Angela, personally, thank you very much that you could join us at this at 9 p.m. in your time and spare all the knowledge. Today, viewers, we had a few learning that migraine viewers can get relief from a low carbohydrate ketogenic diet and adding adequate salt as per the protocol. And for low carb people, please remember a few things that don't take magnesium at night, take it in the morning, and just get away from this flour and this fox food which we are so desperate to stick, all these keto rotis and all. Please take all this thing in full form. And yes, and as the discussion has come out, please avoid flaxseed, which is actually a grain in disguise. So thank you, Angela. Thank you very much on behalf of D-Life, on behalf of Anup Singh. I thank you very much, and I'm sure that our viewers and all the participants can not only learn, but we can also spread this message to the other migraineurs. So thank you once again.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It was a pleasure. Thank you. And nice meeting you all.